All right, Adam, what are we talking about this week?
We are hosting Mr. Tony Moffatt. We're going to talk about a number of things. He's sitting over there drinking water. We talk about NASA, aliens, conspiracy theories, acquisition, interview process, and a number of cool topics. So listen in and hope you enjoy.
Thank you, guys.
Welcome, everyone, to Mish Men, another episode. We hope you enjoyed last week's episode where I talked a little bit about being a test pilot, how you learn it and how you do it. And it was a lot of fun. I had fun talking about that career field, so I hope you enjoyed it too. I am Adam Mauser, and to my immediate right is Mr. Dusty Labar.
Hello, everybody.
And we have a special guest with us this week, Mr. Tony Moffatt.
Hello.
So brief introduction. Tony, I've known Tony for 5-6 years-ish. I first met him when I was joining a program he was on. It was an R&D, research and development effort, to do something with flying and sensors in a particular environment. And I'll just leave it at that. He can go into as much detail as he wants. So that's when I first met Tony, and we had a lot of overlap. Our daughters played on the same volleyball team. And so got to know Tony pretty good. He's got we have some overlap in career besides that job. He was a test pilot as well, Army officer, and he was a KW pilot. So that's a 58 Delta Kiowa Warrior and a 58 Alpha Charlie pilot, right?
Everything that the Army ever owned, the Bell ever made.
Okay.
At some point.
There you go. So flight school, flew for a while, test pilot, and then after that had a brief stint at what I call the extended interview at NASA. So he worked at NASA as an Army assignment, and did a couple other things with the Army. Retired, and business owner and entrepreneur and all around good guy. So welcome, Tony.
Thank you very much. It's good to be here. I appreciate the invitation.
So Tony, if you could, just give us a little background, and we'll just start discussing and asking questions and talking.
Sure, absolutely. Well, I made a promise to myself that if I was ever a guest on anybody's podcast, that I would start off by, I would characterize myself as a husband and a father.
Okay.
I am happily married to my now first wife, Lisa. We're in our 32nd year of marriage.
Oh, wow.
If
Awesome.
you can believe that. We have 5 children. I think they're awesome. They think they're awesome.
Of course.
They probably think they're more awesome than I think they are, but that's a conversation for, a different podcast probably. We are married, obviously, all this time. She did the Army with me and everything that you talked about career-wise, and we've raised these children together. And I am, by profession, that's hard to characterize. I'm an engineer by training. I have a degree in mathematics as well. Been a test pilot. What I've really done is, over the years, I have found things that are interesting to me and pursued them. And I'm one of those people. For a while there, when the old beer commercial was around, I referred to myself as the most interested person in the world.
Interested.
I'm a little bit curious about everything, and I can go off down rabbit holes the way I know you guys can go down rabbit holes. So I'm right there with you. I'm able to go down those rabbit holes, and so over the years I have just been interested in various things. I've been involved in since I got out of the Army. I spent 21 years in the Army in aviation. Did some test pilot work. Also, I know you've talked some, Adam, about being an acquisition officer. I was involved in a lot of aircraft procurement and things after becoming a test pilot. I did a stint at NASA. Happy to talk about any of that. But spent 21 years there, retired. Since then been involved in 5 startup businesses, some of them more successful than others. But like I say, I'm doing what I find interesting. Right now, I work at the University of Alabama at Huntsville in what used to be called the Rotorcraft Systems Engineering Center. They're rebranding now to what's called Autonomous Aerospace Research, and a lot of just groundbreaking kind of research going on over there that we're involved in.
What were your startup businesses? I'm interested.
I got out of the Army in 2008 and had some offers from various aircraft companies, mostly defense contractors, to do the sorts of things that we did on active duty as test pilots, and I call them acquisitors, acquisition officers. So I got involved. I just started a business. I decided I didn't want to go to work for anybody else, and so I started a business knowing nothing. I incorporated 3 months before I got out of the Army, and that was the beginning of my business experience.
So you incorporated before you even got out of the Army?
Just before I got out of the Army, yeah.
Gotcha.
Within, I already had the paperwork in, was authorized, was already going to get retired.
Gotcha.
But so I started a consulting business and made a living off of that for some years, doing engineering kind of consulting, aviation, aerospace, defense related kinds of things. But I had worked with companies from very small shops doing body armor, all the way up to Fortune 500 companies doing big programs for the Army. And so I got quite a diverse look at things. One of the other startups that I was involved with, a friend of mine from the Army, started a business where he bought a Dunkin' Donuts franchise, but he wasn't going to be just the Dunkin' Donuts guy down on the corner. Mm-hmm. He wanted to go to various he wanted to go to military bases and put Dunkin' Donuts in the what we call them PXs, the post exchange, the base exchange, put Dunkin' Donuts in there. Mm-hmm. And his sole reason was, all these years in the Army, I go around places and I can't find a good cup of coffee. And he's a New Jersey kid, and so Dunkin' was his thing, right? Yeah. And so I helped him get going on that, and learned a lot about that business, which is completely different from the defense and DoD business by a long shot. And so all the metrics are different, and the business is different. Everything else has been similar to the DoD sorts of things. Okay. There have been 3 others that I was involved with friends, just helping them get things up and going, using some of what I'd learned in these other business startups to help them get off and running. Okay.
I'm interested in your first one, the consulting, and you said you consulted on anything from body armor to some bigger projects. Yeah. So I'm not sure what you can say, but what was like the most interesting one you consulted on, or maybe a couple of the most interesting ones?
Sure. So the armor was kind of interesting. It was different from anything that I'd ever done, and they were going from making body armor into making armor for aircraft systems, and so that's how I got pulled into it.
Okay. I was wondering how that connection.
Yeah, the connection was made in that way. But the interesting thing about armor is that it's not so much about armor as it is about materials. It's a materials business, and there's always a newer, better material that can defeat something coming along. Sure. And but then there are all kinds of just esoteric things that you learn in that about the materials. I'll give you for instance. There's a difference between bulletproof glass and transparent armor. Okay. Transparent armor, you can actually make ceramics that are see-through, that have the clarity of glass, actually more clear than glass in many cases. And so but there's a difference. It's a completely different process, a completely different material, maybe a completely different series of layups that you use on it, but they have much different characteristics when it comes to defeating some kind of a bullet.
Okay. So when you're ceramics, when most folks think ceramics, they think in art class in junior high school, you've got a clay-like material, right, and you do whatever you're going to do with it. Then you bake it, and then over a series of time, and then you have this hardened material called a ceramic vase or ashtray or whatever it is that you made. So what makes it ceramic? Is it the material, the clay, or is it the baking?
You can get over my head very swiftly on this, and the answer is yes. It's the materials. It's the underlying materials that really define it as a ceramic. It's also to some degree the processes that they use to finish it, to harden it.
So they select a material that's just like the clay, but it's just obviously they're going to remove anything that's not transparent, and they continue to refine that and bake it.
Ish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Science.
Science happens. Hand waving.
So would you say that people, when they say that vehicle has bulletproof glass, are a lot of people misclassifying what is in it, and it's actually transparent ceramic?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Whoa.
Absolutely.
It's kind of like, remember the beginning of Gulf War II, so in Iraq, and Afghanistan, we kept hearing the word helicopter or aircraft was shot down by RPGs.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
It wasn't RPGs. I mean, sometimes it could be, but an RPG is just you shoot a rocket-propelled grenade, so it just shoots straight out. There's no guidance to it. It just hits what it hits.
Yeah, I gotcha.
But most of the time, it was something much more sophisticated than a quote-unquote RPG.
Okay.
Yeah.
So whenever I would hear that in the news, I'd just like, whatever.
Yeah, not exactly. Yeah. But yes, to answer your question, it is a misclassification much of the time.
Okay.
Glass is very heavy.
Yeah, I was wondering.
So when you can imagine in the body armor business, it's a big deal, right? Because human performance, it's all about the weight to defeat ratio. The ability, the capability versus the weight ratio. And it's working on very fine margins, but the same's true with aircraft because you're always hunting for extra margin in weight.
The outside, am I wrong saying this? That like the rockets they shoot into space, a lot of the outside is coated in ceramic because it does heat. It does good with heat.
They're coated in materials for the purpose. I'm not going to say ceramic.
Just to dissipate it, right?
Right.
Okay.
Yeah. A great example of that is the tiles that covered the belly of the space shuttle.
Yeah.
Were actually, they were a material such that you could hold one of those tiles and aim a blowtorch directly at it in your hand and not feel it.
And not be able to feel it?
Yeah.
That's wild.
It was capable of dissipating heat in that way.
Would it reflective / I don't know.
I don't know. Science.
Yeah,
more science.
Ish.
Yeah, all you have to do is, if you don't know, just say science, and then that's fine.
I'll just hand wave like this. These are not the ceramics you're looking for, right?
So clearly I have the same condition you do, where I start hearing something, then that sounds interesting.
Yeah.
Let me ask about it. Maybe
exactly.
Tony knows.
So have you guys seen the fully, I don't know if it's fully, maybe that's the wrong thing to say. Have you seen the bulletproof Tesla truck?
Yes.
Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah. Did you see that it pulled
a Porsche?
A Porsche. It towed a Porsche faster than a Porsche could go.
Yeah, I did see that.
That's pretty wild.
Probably not as far, though.
Yeah, that will. I almost guarantee you not as far.
Yeah.
It's 7,000 pounds. It's 7,000 pounds, I think.
I think so.
The truck.
The truck itself,
7,000 pounds. That's
doesn't surprise me.
It's all those batteries.
Yeah.
It's just the technology. It's just a locomotive. It's with higher performance.
I found this really interesting. I don't know if you listened to. So Elon was on Joe Rogan's podcast recently. I don't know if you guys listened to that.
Yep.
But
Yeah.
he had made a comment. So what Rogan was suggesting was, how do we make it go farther, longer? And he suggested that that's not the problem. But I think that's the opposite for me. I think that is the problem.
I think so too.
Because he's saying,
remember, he's selling them.
Well,
that's true.
But he's thought about it, and he's like, but like, to me, he's saying that the range is 300 miles.
I don't know.
Which
they brought that down in the last couple of weeks.
I'm sure with 7,000 pounds, I'm sure they were like, whoops. But
they had an independent test agency to do some true developmental testing, I think.
But even if he let's just for argument's sake say it is 300 miles.
Sure.
Would you feel super comfortable going on a 250-mile trip?
No.
Yeah, see, neither would I. That's the problem, right?
That is the problem.
Yeah, that's
because
the problem.
like they're, just because the nature of the gasoline engine and just our culture, I will feel comfortable driving anywhere. I won't like it, but a quarter tank of gas and let's just go. And then we'll find a gas station on the way.
Yeah.
But electric, I don't know.
Well, I think the other piece is that infrastructure, right? It's if you do see charging stations now, it's no guarantee that it's compatible with your vehicle.
Right.
It's also a problem.
He was also suggesting that people just need to get on board with your car taking a half hour to charge up. Do you know how our attention span is 0?
Yeah.
I mean, it takes me too long to fill my truck up now with gas. I'm like, come on.
Think about how frustrated we get on like YouTube videos.
Yeah.
When you got to wait 5 seconds
Yeah.
before you can skip the ad. And God forbid, you have to wait a full ad. And you're like, oh my gosh, I can't watch this video.
Yeah, I won't even do it. I won't even watch the video.
Just not going to do it.
Yeah, I just won't do it.
If you can't skip, non-skip. So.
Yeah.
So I got off topic, but I was saying he claims that it's bulletproof, and Rogan shot an arrow at it and couldn't penetrate it.
That was pretty cool.
And
that was not a small arrow. There's a lot of mass behind it.
Oh yeah. He said he shot a pretty good size arrow at it with a lot of weight. So you'd think it dented it a little bit, but
yeah, didn't break through. Which, like a normal car, it would just go clean through like butter.
It would go right.
When you see in movies and TV shows, the cops hide behind a door.
Yeah, not so much.
I don't think so.
That's the last place I would hide behind is a door.
Engine block.
Yeah, that's a good spot.
Put that between me.
Yeah, that's right.
Or batteries. Batteries would be a good one.
I'm always interested when somebody works for. We'll get to aliens in a little bit.
Okay.
I'm always interested when somebody works for NASA. What did you do for NASA? Just because I think so. I grew up in Pennsylvania, not near any NASA. So and then I went to Myrtle Beach. Now I'm here. And so it's like a common thing around here for people to be like, that person works for NASA. But that still blows my mind. So I'm always like, what do you do for NASA? So it's always one of the things that I have to ask.
So I had one of the most interesting jobs in the world.
Okay.
I am readily willing to admit that. I don't know how in the world I ended up there, but I did. Mm-hmm. So the Army had a situation where most of the astronauts after the Apollo program were getting selected out of Air Force, Navy, some Marine Corps, that sort of thing. But the Army had good pilots and people who could actually do all this stuff, and so they started actually choosing some people from among their active duty that they were ostensibly going to make into astronaut candidates, and they would send them down to Houston. And they'd work at Johnson Space Center there directly in the astronaut office, in an office called the Vehicle Integration Test Office, the VIT.
Okay.
And so after test pilot school, after about a year and a half of being a test pilot, I was invited to come down there and be part of that. I'll call it a program just to give it a label, but be part of that operation. And so what we would do is we would work directly, would be assigned directly to a shuttle flight crew. At this time, I had the good fortune to actually be down there during the highest level of shuttle activity during the construction of the International Space Station. Mm-hmm. I got there right after they had launched the Unity node, and I left, unfortunately, just after Columbia crashed in 2003.
Yeah.
But I was involved in launch and landing. Our job would be our job as in the Vehicle Integration Test Office was to spend all of our time basically down at Kennedy Space Center, down at the Cape, and we would follow whatever payload our assigned crew was supposed to take up on orbit and install on the International Space Station. We would follow that through, and we would be their direct eyes and hands on the module. We'd communicate with our flight crews every day, and we would coordinate for them to come down and take a look at things at critical points in its development, that sort of thing. So you had a lot of hands-on work with your flight crews. Mm-hmm. They were very dependent on us to really see things for them, and it was very much like the test pilot work, the test pilot world. They needed you to see things through their eyes in many ways, right?
Gotcha.
And so we did a lot of that sort of thing, and but we were also able to participate in launches and landings, and a lot of the on-orbit activities. Occasionally, we would be in the back in Houston. We would be in mission control and do some of that kind of work. So it was very interesting work. It was a once in a lifetime chance. I got a chance to interview to be an astronaut.
Wow!
How'd you do?
Didn't make it.
Yeah.
Actually, I got medically disqualified. Had a kidney issue, and so I was disqualified. Don't know whether I would have been selected or not.
Okay.
But I got the chance to go have the interview and go through that whole process.
Wow.
You went the interview where it's like this odd table where you're like,
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's an L-shaped table like we're sitting at, and actually where I'm sitting right now is kind of where I was seated. Mm-hmm. But it's, imagine this is a conference room table.
Yeah.
And across the top dais here, or the top of the L, are 5 people In the middle was Apollo astronaut John Young.
Mm-hmm.
There was the chief of the astronaut office. I can't name everybody for you now. There was chief of the astronaut office. There was chief of mission control. There was a chief flight surgeon and one of the other flight operations chiefs. All the high NASA muckety-mucks that are directly involved with astronaut operations.
So you had an in-person interview to be an astronaut.
Yep.
What do they ask you?
Nothing.
Okay.
Yeah. So here's how it goes. You sit down and you get we call it the gouge. This is from Navy Test Pilot School, right? The gouge is when you go around to, and I guess it's a Navy term. Probably.
I think it is.
Must be a Navy term. I didn't ever hear it in the Army, but you get the gouge. So you go around to everybody who's done it before, right? And it's like, what's the experience like? And they tell you, they tell you everything. So you're all ready when you go in there. But basically what they do, this table that I'm at, there are probably 20 people involved in this, but the rest of them are sitting behind me or out of my frame of vision, and the people that are commanding my attention are right there, right? And so one of your challenges is to sort of try to engage everybody in the room.
So there's people that are part of the interview are behind you.
Yes.
And then you're talking to.
I have somebody sitting right here next to me.
Yeah.
I can't tell you who any of these people were. It's all a blur to me now, right?
Okay.
But yeah, they're sort of like watching you from all angles, and they're astronauts. Many of them were people that I knew because I'd been working for a couple of years with various flight crews. There were people whose crews I'd worked on and things like that, and so I knew a lot of the folks in the room.
Okay.
But when you go in and you sit down, you basically have 45 minutes to state your case, right?
Oh.
And you sit down, and John Young, Apollo astronaut, commander of an Apollo mission, man who walked on the moon, sits there and he looks at you and he introduces a couple of people, says, "Thank you very much for coming to the interview," as if you wouldn't come.
Yeah. Thanks for making time.
We really appreciate you making time, Major Moffatt.
I was going to go to Costco and get a couple of hot dogs.
Exactly. We really appreciate you making time. Tell us about yourself. And that's your cue to talk for 45 minutes, no more, no less. You have to leave 15 minutes for questions. Basically, you're shooting for the plus or minus 30 seconds kind of a thing, and so you just had this rehearsed. This is who I am. This is where I've been. This is why I want to be an astronaut. This is why you should care.
Okay.
It was sort of like the elevator speech on steroids from hell.
So because you gouged other people, you knew what they were expecting.
Yeah.
But if you didn't do that and you walked in there, you'd have no idea what the heck was going on. You have to do it.
You just wouldn't.
You just have to do it. Yeah, I got you.
You do. You absolutely do.
You'd have to because, like most interviews, like a regular interview, when you say, "Hey, just tell us a little bit about yourself," what you're expecting from that interviewee is maybe a minute, plus or minus,
brief.
Because if the guy just won't stop talking, you start doing these numbers here.
We have lots of other interviews today.
Kicking back.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But if you not like you could have done the 30-second to 2-minute speech and then like,
now what?
Thank you.
Space
Mr. Moffatt.
Space is pretty cool. I'd like to go there if possible.
Yeah, this would be awesome. I've been around this quite a bit,
I'm kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. Do you know who I am?
Yeah.
So, interestingly, though, they feel very free, of course, to break in and I believe probably there's somebody that's planted there to break your train of thought.
Yeah,
and get
I'm sure
you
a
off.
psychiatrist is involved somehow.
Yeah.
Something like that. Yeah. Well, that's not even the half of it. This is a 1-week interview. So this with a 1 hour board interview. Have you ever seen the movie The Right Stuff?
I don't think I have.
Probably not.
Read the book.
The Right Stuff.
Read the book. But if you watch the movie, just watch the portion where they go through the astronaut session where they're doing just all the physical stuff, because it's literally, I have so many stories about this. This is it's literally a 1-week physical where you are given some sort of a diagnostic test about every system in your body.
Okay.
You are examined by a specialist in that system to include a 2-day psych workup. They do a complete psychological evaluation on you. And then, you know, during all that, you go and you have this 1 hour interview with the board.
Uh-huh.
And so a funny story about that, they told us when we went in, they said two things. If you have some kind of an ailment that you don't know about, you will by the end of this week. And they had diagnosed people with cancer. They'd saved people's lives coming through there, you know, and because literally, you've never had a physical workup like this.
Yeah.
One of the other things that they said, I don't know if it was the second thing they said, but one of the other things that I remember them saying was, you know, people always accuse us of wearing the Holter monitor, or of putting you in the Holter monitor. Quick aside, a Holter monitor is a heart monitor.
Okay.
That if you have a heart condition, anybody in your audience who's had a heart condition that maybe know about this, but they wire you up and they record every heartbeat for 24 hours, everything. They would we've spent 24 hours during this period in a Holter monitor, and they said, you know, some of you will be wearing a Holter monitor when you go in for your interview.
Oh boy, that's fun. No pressure.
We did not do that on purpose.
Yeah.
The schedule is already laid out, and we in the medical side have no idea what the board side is doing.
Gotcha.
Guess who was wearing a Holter monitor when I went in? As a matter of fact, I still have it. I have this. I have actually an old paper printout of
EKG
of my. Well, it's even
More
better
detailed?
than an
More
EKG.
detailed?
It's more detailed. It's like 250 pages of just heartbeats.
Yeah.
Right. But we had to keep a little log at certain times, you know, a time hack of this is what happened. Right.
Yeah.
I went running during this time. Yeah, exactly. Well, part of my log was prepping for interview, going into interview is right here. And so I have a couple of pages there of my heart rate in the run up to this interview, during the interview, and in the, you know, in the spool down afterwards.
That's funny.
So yeah, I got to wear the Holter monitor. The hardest part of that was getting dressed, because you know you're putting on a coat and tie for this and everything, and of course this is just it's literally like a fanny pack with a little recorder there with, you know, an EKG attached. to it.
Yeah. I gotcha. That's wild. Until you just mentioned about the 2-day psych eval, I never thought how important it would be not to have somebody have a mental breakdown in space.
Yeah.
That's probably very important.
Well, and more importantly, and probably more likely, is can this guy get along with the rest of our guys that are of this kind of type of persona?
Yeah, that's right.
Because what you really needed in that was high performers, but you're going to be in close quarters with people for extraordinarily long periods of time. You know, you have to have good coping skills. You have to have good, you know, you have to have sort of a well-balanced personality.
Yeah, good people skills, I assume.
You know what? Yes.
Yeah.
That's more because for whatever reason, you know, the astronauts are put out there sort of front and center and forward in the public.
Yeah, they're PR people.
Yeah, very much PR people. So they end up doing a lot of public appearances and things like that.
Yeah, like when Buzz Aldrin said he saw aliens on the moon.
Yeah. So
he's the man.
Did anybody from your class, either your TPS class or this interview panel acquisition class, did any of them make it?
They did. I can't name them for you, but
Because you can't remember, or because you can't?
Because I can't remember. I'm sorry.
He was getting excited. It's the aliens, isn't it?
You know, if anybody goes to actually check, so here's you want to get into some conspiracy theory and aliens and stuff. You know, if anybody goes to check, I didn't actually appear in they send you through as a cohort. So I think there were 17 of us in, you know, whatever it was, interview class, you know, interview tranche, whatever, I don't know. They take a picture of everybody, and so this is the other funny story I have about that. How many people here have actually had surgery as part of a job interview? Nobody? I have. I had to have probably shouldn't tell this. Can I tell them that I had a colonoscopy?
Yeah, of course.
Podcast.
It's a normal medical procedure.
It's a normal medical procedure. Yeah. Well, they'd done a diagnostic that they call a sigmoidoscopy. It was just like checking the first 15 inches there, and found a polyp. And so I had to go and actually have a full up. We're going to knock you out under anesthetic and give you a colonoscopy as part of the job interview.
My Lord.
And so as a result, I was off on my birthday having a colonoscopy when they took the class picture. So I don't appear in the class
There we
picture.
go. That's awesome.
I don't appear in the
you
class
weren't-
picture.
Yeah, I
So
gotcha.
was he really there or was he not?
I'm gonna find that class picture.
Yep.
That'd be good. Maybe Abby, the intern, can find it.
Yeah, Abby, if you can find that, you get bonus points.
So,
Good luck. I want a copy.
Yeah.
where do they keep the aliens?
Where do they keep the aliens? I have no clue.
Oh, Adam got to it first.
I have no clue. I haven't seen. I don't know anything about aliens. Promise, cross my heart. But I have seen. I have seen the remains of the shuttle Challenger, and we have.
I bet that was sobering.
That was very sobering. Yeah, it was incredibly
Were
sobering.
you part of the investigative team?
Not on Challenger, of course. I was in college when Challenger happened, but I was part of the investigative team on Columbia.
Yeah, Columbia. Yeah,
Right.
that's what I was
Yeah.
thinking. Yeah.
Yeah, Columbia. The every once in a while, oddly enough, on Challenger, every once in a while, a piece of that will still wash ashore because it came to pieces over the Atlantic,
Right.
and most of it went into the Atlantic. And so every once in a while, a piece of that, or two or three, some debris will wash ashore somewhere, and it'll find its way. It'll migrate its way. By the time I was there, the place that people were finding it was like on eBay.
Right.
And they'd go out and go, yeah, that's U.S. Federal property.
We'll take that.
We'll take that. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Right.
No reserve.
So every once in a while, they would have that stuff. They would just collect it, in an office down there at Kennedy Space Center. And every once in a while, they'd go out and they had taken literally the Challenger, the remains of the shuttle Challenger, and they had dumped it into an old MX missile silo over on the Air Force side, the Cape Canaveral side over there. Yeah, I think it's an MX missile, but one of the big ICBM silos over there, dumped it in, and so basically you'd have a crane crew out there, and they would just take the top off of it, and you'd put the stuff in and go, yep, there it is. And but they always had to have an astronaut office representative, which we were as part of the VIT office, and so I was there as an astronaut office representative to inter some of the Challenger debris.
Now, were you? You said you were part of the Columbia. Were you in the VIT? I guess
I was.
Was some of your payload that you were monitoring on that spacecraft?
I wasn't involved in that, but one of my colleagues had been following. That was so Columbia was not an International Space Station construction mission; it was a science mission, and so all the payloads were experiments. They were science this and science that, science-ish.
Yeah,
science stuff, right?
And aliens.
Yeah, exactly. Science and aliens.
We'll get to that.
So they had all these different science payloads and everything in there, and so one of my colleagues had worked that very closely with that crew, and so it would be sort of like all hands on deck during launch week and that sort of thing. We would all support that sort of thing, but actually the day-to-day stuff was supported by one of the other guys in the VIT.
Did you ever have any payloads from Robert Bigelow?
I don't know. I everything that I did was associated with Space Station. It was the big module.
We had Tim Pickens on the podcast. Do you know him?
Of yep.
And he worked with. The reason I asked is I know that he worked with Robert Bigelow. I don't think on the space station stuff. I think it was something else. I can't remember now. But I know that Robert Bigelow was trying to get inflatable things to the space station, inflatable living quarters to the space station. So I didn't know if that was a
concept for Space Station, and circling back around on our armor conversation, the materials that you would use for something that's inflatable like that would be very much like Kevlar, that sort of thing. Kevlar is actually kind of a low grade material nowadays for that kind of stuff. But yeah, you would use that sort of thing. One of the reasons you would do that is because one of the biggest threats to astronauts that are out spacewalking, to things like the solar arrays on the space station, are micrometeorites or just projectiles that are up there in space, because they're all traveling at 17,500 miles an hour, and a grain of sand at 17,500 miles an hour.
It'll hurt a little bit.
Yeah, F equals MA.
F equals MA. Yeah. That's exactly right. And so we have a lot of
science.
That's science right there. If gravity's a constant, which may or may not be true.
It's waves.
But it's close enough.
We don't even know if it's a force.
Yeah.
That's right.
It's waves, right? Gravity's waves.
It's an acceleration.
Gravity just is, man.
Yeah.
Gravity just is.
It just is.
Isn't that what what the heck's his name? Bob Lazar said that gravity is waves. That's how they can bend. That's how they can
I don't know about
fly. Okay.
Bob Lazar.
We could talk about that another time. I was going to ask something. Oh, I asked Adam because I'm interested. When we were talking last week about him being a test pilot, and my question is, and this could be wrong, but my initial thought is when somebody gets out of the military from wherever, and they were flying, that there would be some amount of thought to going into commercial flight.
Sure.
So was that something that you thought about?
No.
So you just were just like, that's not, was it something because you didn't have any interest in it, or you had talked to other people that did it, or what exactly was the reason to do something else?
So I think Adam and I maybe sit on two different sides of the pilot dichotomy, I think, from the Army. And so from my perspective, there are two types of pilots. There are the type who live to fly, and those who fly for a living.
Gotcha.
I was on the I fly for a living side, and so as a result, if I didn't come out on the flight schedule, it didn't bother me all that much.
Now, let me interject this here. So the implication is that I live to fly.
Yeah.
But which one of us is part owner of an airplane?
You on an airplane?
I do. Yeah, absolutely.
Who hasn't flown since they left a flying position?
Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Touche.
Fair. Touche. Fair. That's absolutely fair.
So,
But you're right. You're right. I really enjoyed flying. I enjoyed like the engineering approach to flying. Loved it.
Yeah.
At TPS, there were so many things that I wanted to find out, and I found out, and I dug in, and I loved it. But once I was done with it, I think the reason a lot of folks don't do the commercial is because the people that gravitate to being a test pilot, they might enjoy flying. They might enjoy flying a lot. They might even have a plane afterwards. But they're more like this. It's a weird, eclectic group of people.
yeah.
That have these weird and diverse interests. But some of them congeal around certain things, like the number of guys that are in like unicyclists.
Mm-hmm.
There's like 2 or 3 guys that I know of off the top of my head that have a unicycle.
Well, didn't you buy a penny farthing at one time?
Oh, no, that was my goal. Because one of my goals was to be, that was my joke because, I had a farm, I got a ton of kids, I play the banjo, barbershop. And I said, you know what?
Got a fabulous mustache.
I got it. Thank you. I need to buy a penny farthing bicycle. And for the listener, a penny farthing bicycle is the type with the giant wheel.
The giant front wheel, right?
The giant front wheel. That's the penny. And then the farthing is the tiny little one behind it. And of course, you got to have a mustache and some cool glasses and maybe a bowler. So anyway.
Do you have a bowler yet?
I don't have a bowler. I need some sort of hat to go with this.
Have you thought about cowboy hat?
I have a cowboy hat.
You do?
Yeah.
Look at the cowboy hat.
It doesn't look as good as I
because you
want.
look at who was the conservative radio jock that always wore the cowboy hat? Now
Don Imus?
Imus, yeah.
Yeah.
You look too much like Imus. You can't do that. You can't go there.
I'm going to have to pull up Don Imus, but the picture in my head is not good.
Imus is a legend, but
So
in certain quarters.
So I guess because you guys were in a very, you have more in-depth experience flying, but do you guys, you can say I'm stupid, but do you guys look at commercial pilots as like nerds or losers?
Nope.
Like, is there or is it just a different career path? Because
Way different career path.
I think people have
We're the nerds.
I think.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think people have in general, you inherently trust a guy that's flying you through the air.
Yeah. Well,
you know what I mean. You know what I'm trying
it
to say?
takes a certain set of stones to put 280 people, 120 people behind you.
Yeah.
And take them someplace.
Yeah.
Through the air.
The fluid.
Yeah. So it's non-trivial, right? It's a big deal
It's a
that they
big
do
deal,
that.
yeah.
We
absolutely.
trivialize it culturally. We're just, just like, we're just going to go fly over here,
Right.
fly over there. But it is non-trivial because you have 6 degrees of freedom, and you're going through a fluid, and it's almost effortless.
And by the way, you're traveling close to the speed of sound. They typically, once they get up, trued out on altitude, they're about 0.85, somewhere around in there. They are going damn fast.
How fast is that? 600 miles an hour?
It depends
So
on the
speed of
temperature.
What? No. I'm asking how
You're
fast
gonna bring
the
out the
plane
nerd
goes.
in us now.
Yeah, depend. Like there's 100
boy.
different speeds. So,
But yes,
so true
ish.
airspeed would be like the true speed, ignoring all the other aspects.
Let's ignore all the other aspects. 600 miles an hour? I'm guessing.
It depends on temperature and pressure of the.
656. Yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
let's guess that I guessed pretty close.
You guessed
you
pretty
nailed
close.
it.
Okay, that's
Absolutely,
that's what I'm
100%.
That was
I was
dead on. Dead nuts.
I was afraid to say, I'm going to inflate your ego,
Yeah.
that you were like spot on, but
You're
that's
like,
yeah.
I'm
what-
ashamed
this
of you,
guy's-
Adam. You should have known that off the top of your
This
head.
guy's not even in aviation, and he's
I mean, what's
nailing
his
it.
problem, right?
I have a nice spreadsheet that can give you that answer.
Yeah.
Still, for
I'd
some
like to see
reason.
it.
But back to the question about airline pilots as nerds and that sort of thing. I have actually considered, there's been a hiring spate going on out in commercial aviation. I've actually considered, since I bought the airplane, I've actually considered going back to it, because one of the things that actually attracts me at this point in my life is, the guys say, you know what, when I park the airplane and I walk up the jetway, I don't get any emails after work.
I
I
gotcha.
I don't have the work doesn't follow me. The most I have to do off hours is go and check the schedule to see when I'm flying again the
gotcha.
next day.
It's low key.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this question. Could you guys just take a job tomorrow flying for a commercial? Like, do you have to go get some new certification, or are they just like, you check out?
I'd have to get current, and then obviously there is an interview process.
Okay, like interview for the company aside. Like, could you just go, like, you have to go get a license or something? Like, you don't have a current license, or you do have a current license? I guess
got a license. I just have to. Well, I wouldn't even really have to get current.
No,
so you could just go take a job tomorrow if somebody was like, hey, do you want to fly for Delta?
Yeah, and as long as I passed the interview and I had my my bona fides, then I would go through their training program to fly their.
Yeah.
I wouldn't fly a 737 these days, but maybe something else.
Because the doors fly off?
The doors, a really cruddy autopilot system.
flight control system.
Wait,
Yeah.
are you saying you have you would not fly in a 737 in general?
Not now. There's been too many problems. That's the Chevy 350 of airliners right now.
You just unlocked a new fear that I had, because I don't like flying anyway.
I wouldn't.
Yeah.
So let me put your fears at ease. A background in aviation and that sort of thing. A lot of what you read in the press when they talk about, the rudder had to be inspected for loose bolts. And so, the immediate thing that springs to mind is, we've got, bolts rolling around down in the belly of the aircraft and that sort of thing. And loose might be, it was torqued 10 foot-pounds too low.
I got you. It's still attached. It's just not as tight as they recommend.
And one of the reasons why, I'll just say this now, 737 aside, but one of the reasons why aviation is so safe is because there's this incredible process where if Delta Airlines finds a sort of a recurring problem, we've been finding this bolt, in our new airplanes coming out, it's, when we do our torque checks at 50 hours or whatever, it's low by 10. They'll publish that as a circular that goes out to all of the other 737 owners, right? All of the other airlines and everything. And that's what these articles are referring to right now is, one of those circulars. Well, the very fact that you're able to read that in an article means that somebody identified that, shared it with the rest of the aviation industry, their competitors even, right? But it's all part of that safety machinery that continues to work. And so,
When you look at the volume of air traffic,
oh my gosh,
and then there's like one or two incidents, and they're bad.
yeah.
So the criticality of failures in aviation much higher than cars.
Yeah.
Because if something goes wrong upstairs, then
It's a huge problem.
it's going to be a problem. It usually involves flames. It usually involves some sort of crazy. So whenever something happens, the great example is the engine failures, right, on the Sullenberger flight when we took off from LaGuardia.
Yes. Yeah.
Hit a flock of birds, both engine fails, and he was able to miraculously land the aircraft, and it stayed afloat miraculously.
That's the one that Tom
Hanks.
Hanks
Tom
did the
Hanks.
movie on.
Yes.
That was perfect.
That doesn't
It
happen.
couldn't have gone any better.
Yeah.
Part of that was, he had been a trainer and rehearsed and trained other pilots on this episode of what would happen. Well, how could you do this? But anyway, there's a ton of things that can go wrong, and when they do, that's very bad. But most of the time, nothing happens.
But that's why the pilots are there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is you know, to take off and land and, you know, deal with the nonsense when it happens. Yeah.
But you saw that Alaska flight, that door flew off?
Yeah.
I mean, that must be terrifying.
I bet it was. Yeah.
I'd be terrified.
Yeah,
if I were sitting there.
Because it's a pressurized cabin.
Yeah, right. Yeah. That's what my first.
When they say explosive pressure depressurization, they're not kidding.
Yeah.
Because essentially what's happening is you're going from, they usually keep them around 5,000,
5 to 10,
feet somewhere in the, you know, so the cabin pressure is equivalent to being at 5,000 feet, but you're 20,000 feet higher than that.
I understand. Okay.
And
so the pressure's higher inside.
I've never thought about that.
Yeah.
They're pressurizing it to a different altitude.
So you can breathe.
Yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'm going to ask this question now. I've been waiting patiently.
All right.
But since
it's aliens,
so
I feel
I've been teasing it.
I feel it coming.
Okay, so you don't have to go into anything you don't want to talk about, but
you don't even have to ask. I don't know.
You were in. Well, I don't. You may not know anything, but you were in aviation.
Yeah.
You interviewed to be a NASA pilot or a NASA astronaut. Was there ever a thought in your head that like aliens may be real, or I want to see aliens, or maybe I'll encounter aliens, or they'll show me something crazy, or were you just like, I don't even care? And it's okay to be, I don't care.
I don't care.
Okay.
At the time.
Yeah.
Okay. So I experienced, ancient aliens and stuff after I left. After I left Houston,
like the TV show.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
No, real.
The real ones.
I just had to be clear.
You don't know? You mean?
He went back in time and built the pyramids. I forgot to mention that in the prelude.
Yeah, we should have said something about that, right? That probably would.
Okay, so how did they do it then?
Talk about burying the lead, right?
Yeah.
It was a crane.
Yeah. Well, they just brought a crane back.
So, but I was not. I was more interested. So I was a little bit of a Apollo nerd. And what I really wanted to do was be part of the return to the moon mission kind of a thing. And, there was a lot of talk about that sort of thing at the time, and there still is. And I never envisioned things like, SpaceX happening. I guess I just always had it in my mind. Maybe it's because I'm the generation that I am or whatever. I don't know. But I just always had it in my mind that NASA goes to space.
Yeah, I understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Unless you talk to Burt Rutan.
I don't know who Burt Rutan is.
He's like an aviation enthusiast, and he's a big like, hey, NASA is subsidized. What about the rest of us? Because we could get some money, and we know we can go to space.
I gotcha. I gotcha.
Like the aviation pope, if you meet Burt Rutan, you kiss the ring. So.
Oh, okay, I gotcha.
He's a big deal.
He's a big deal. Yeah, but no, not that interested at the time.
Okay. Well, bummer. So you've heard, and Adam laughed about it earlier when I said, but you've heard the clip where Buzz Aldrin said that he saw aliens or encountered something on the moon.
I have. It's been a while, but
you don't care too much about it. I'm fascinated by aliens.
Yeah, fascinated.
So, we'll see what happens.
We'll see.
We'll see what happens.
I always leave the option open, but I think in all likelihood it's.
I was pretty bummed out about the guy that was David Grush because he didn't. I was hoping that he was going to give more information, and he pretty much didn't say anything.
Personally, I think all of these are that we have a lot of technology that's much more advanced than what we know about, and it's just attributed by the government as alien technology through a means of sources unbeknownst to them that they're these.
Well, you guys have probably seen technology that wasn't available to the public as test pilots, I would assume, and then because GPS was a military thing before it was GPS to the people, and that's not that big of a deal. Like that's not that big of a deal. You know what I mean? I'm trying to say it's not
I'm
like
trying to think the anti-gravity suit that I used to fly. Oh no!
All right.
Whoops!
Oopsie daisy! You weren't supposed to say anything about it. Now I have to kill you.
Bleep that.
Just kidding. When I traveled to that
there's nothing fantastic. I mean, everything that I ever worked on there was another application elsewhere, and we're just transferring that application to this other thing.
Yeah.
Okay. But I mean, I think it's pretty clear that aliens exist based on this conversation.
Based on this conversation, really?
Yeah.
I've given you evidence that aliens exist.
Listen, anybody.
I should be a rich man by day after tomorrow, right?
Hey, listen, anybody that I can't trust anybody. The fact that you said you don't care makes me think that you care.
I tell you. So, do you want to know my position on all this stuff?
Yeah, of course.
So, the alien sort of thing. One of the wormholes that I went down, one of the deep
wormholes.
rabbit holes.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. Yeah.
Freudian slip
warp,
much?
warp factor 5.
One of the rabbit holes. Well, I guess we could say wormholes. One
Sure.
of the wormholes I dive down in alien lore is the Fermi paradox stuff, and there are all these different instantiations of the Fermi paradox. But you're familiar with the Fermi paradox is if the universe has been around as long as it has, and a 1 in a billion chance could have happened a billion times in our universe, right? Where are all the aliens?
Yeah.
And it's, well, they're too intelligent to interact with us, or they're too, or they're shy, and just all kinds of different instantiations. But I think there's something to that. It is, the overriding question is, where are they?
Yep.
And where are we as far as that goes? And, maybe it's just not our time.
Or the universe isn't nearly as old as what we think it is.
So I personally flip-flop back and forth aggressively depending on what the government releases, because
it's a psyop.
The more that they release, I'm like, well, that's a problem.
That's what they want you to do.
But then also they would take advantage of something like that and be like, I want them to think that it's me releasing the information about this kind. They're trying to reverse overthink me.
It's a total psyop.
And I won't let it happen.
Absolutely.
Won't let it happen.
There you go.
Once I see the tall grays, I'll know that which is a classification of the aliens that have been seen.
The tall
There's
grays.
some tall grays, some short yellows or something. I don't remember.
There's
like a whole.
They have a legitimate list of like the
there's
different types
a
of
list
aliens.
of different classifications.
What about the
of
paper
aliens.
mache ones that dude in Mexico found?
Those are real, man.
Yeah.
Those are real. They did a freaking MRI scan on those things.
Yeah.
They're real. I believe it. I emailed them to ask if I can come look in person. I haven't heard back yet, but I'm sure.
Was it Dustin Labar or was it Mishmash Men?
It was from Mishmash, man. I felt like they would email me back.
That's what I would recommend. Is you got to
absolutely
we're the media now.
Hey,
this here high class podcast. So they will definitely answer you.
I said, to whom it may concern, Senior. I'm from a podcast with almost 50 episodes. I would like to see your aliens.
We have 100 listeners.
Yeah. I would like to see your aliens.
10 regular.
Yeah.
Yeah, 10 regular.
Yeah. So
I'll tell you what I do think though is
the
thing that I'm interested in is right now is things like that are very ancient sites like Göbekli Tepe in Turkey,
familiar.
right?
I'm very familiar.
Now this I think there's some substance to that. The whole Graham Hancock thing about a species with amnesia.
Yeah. Have you watched his series on Netflix?
I have. Yeah.
I've watched it twice, so I can
Wall to wall.
You are like singing Dusty's song.
So my favorite, who's the big geologist guy that takes him out west?
Randall Carlson.
Randall Carlson. Yeah, Randall Carlson. Now that guy's legit. He's completely legit.
Yeah, he is.
And I believe everything he says.
You believe everything he says
Yeah, absolutely.
about the Younger Dryad's impact?
Yeah.
You believe everything he says that he thinks it's true, or you believe everything that he states is true?
You think everything he's saying he believes to be true? Is that what you're trying to? Are you trying to screw me up with that right now?
I believe that what he says he believes to be true, and I believe him when he says that he believes that.
It's
to
like
be
when I
true.
get into a fight with my wife, and I'm like,
What are you really
I'm
saying?
like, I didn't say you were crazy. I said you were acting.
You
crazy.
appear to be crazy to me.
Absolutely.
This is my considered opinion.
Acting crazy.
Yeah. I've watched that series twice.
Have you?
Because this is wild that my brain works this way. I just sat up one night and I was like, I feel like I missed something when I watched that. So I just watched it again, just focused in on it with no interruptions.
You're taking notes.
Here's how bad it is. When I watched it, when it first came out, I binge watched the thing, and by the end of it, I was like unimpressed because he didn't tell me anything I didn't already know.
The most frustrating thing, this spans way beyond just him, but I can't stand. So like he's obviously fighting archaeologists.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
The thing that I can't stand is when anybody won't debate somebody and they're just like, no, you're just crazy. I won't debate you.
Yeah, I don't like that.
That drives me crazy in any aspect of anything. And it could be like, it's even when Aaron Rodgers, who's not a doctor at all, was like, I'll debate Fauci.
Yeah.
And you're like, and he's like, yeah, I wouldn't.
Well, he's crazy.
Yeah,
But it's like, well,
if he's so stupid, smash him.
like
just
was
destroy
it Peter
him.
Tillman? Is that the COVID proponent, the COVID shot proponent
For
that Joe Rogan had on?
Peter Attia.
Attia.
No, it wasn't Peter Attia.
No, I don't think it was Attia.
No, it wasn't Attia. It was.
But that he was a medical
proponent.
doctor, just in complete and utter horrible shape. I
Yeah,
mean,
it
by
was-
any measure.
I know exactly who you're talking about.
And any metric. And then he was talking trash, and it's like, and Joe Rogan, like, he's an inquisitive fellow.
Yeah.
Right.
And he's like, so, you know, do you take supplements? Do you exercise?
Yeah.
What do you eat? Do you eat like, and the guy
Hotez,
says
Peter
like,
Hotez.
Hotez.
Yeah.
And just eats trash and garbage, and then is telling me that I need to get a shot for my health.
Yeah. Joe
Yeah,
Rogan
come
offered
on.
him something like $100,000 to debate
Yeah.
RFK.
And he refused.
refused to do it.
And any doctor that, you know, okay, well, if you won't debate me because I'm not a doctor, then how about a doctor that RFK?
Yeah.
No, he wasn't interested because he's frightful.
Well, the problem is those guys, it's the appeal to authority thing. But these guys
Yes.
that are constantly under fire are so much more adept to arguing their point because
Right.
they are everybody says they're wrong.
Yeah.
So they continually argue their point with facts. Where these guys are just like, I'm a doctor. Like you should.
Yeah,
just
you have to believe me because
I'm a doctor.
Right.
So I would be afraid too. I'd be
Yeah.
afraid to go. After I listened to RFK on Rogan's podcast and a
Yeah.
couple others, I'd be afraid.
It's
to debate
eye-opening,
him.
isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'd be afraid to debate him. He has a lot. He has a lot of studies that he's bringing up.
Yeah.
You better do your research.
Well, let's at least have the conversation, right?
Well, that's
Right.
why I
You
feel
know,
about
as
Graham.
a society.
That's why I feel about Graham Hancock when they're like, he's totally wrong. I was like, okay, well, he's not an archaeologist by trait. So if he's very wrong,
And by his own admission, by the way, too, he comes out in that documentary and says, "Hey, look, I'm a journalist.
Yeah.
I know a heck of a lot about it because this is what I've been focused on and written however many books he's written on it. But I'm a journalist and I know this stuff inside and out. But I'm not the archaeologist that's going out and doing it. So let's have it.
if an archaeologist wants to debate him, and that's anything, just like we said about doctors too. Like if you're saying somebody's wrong, I mean, it should be pretty easy for you to debate them.
And you can't hide behind the fact that you have some sort of certification
Yeah.
that says you're an archaeologist. So I have this undergrad and now graduate school and now maybe a PhD in archaeology.
Yeah.
That means nothing unless you can actually use it. So if you're as wise and savvy in your particular field, you should be able to bring Graham up on the step. Like, okay, I hear what you're saying, but did you consider these things?
Yeah.
There
Right.
might be alternate
Yeah.
explanations
Like
for it.
doctors used to like hammer people's brains through their nose and lobotomize them.
Right.
So I mean, maybe
We use
should,
leeches to cure things.
Yeah, we should just
So-
maybe
Call it
be
medical
careful.
practice
Yeah,
for a
yeah,
reason,
yeah.
right? You know,
It's practice.
Maybe just be a
Practice.
little careful.
Yeah.
So
about mastery. Let's have some medical mastery.
Right.
okay, I got my conspiracy stuff. I'm good.
Dude, I could go. So we just covered like 5 different topics. I could go a whole nother hour on all that stuff.
Maybe we need to
We
bring
need to have we probably need to have a part 2 because if you have a lot of stuff to bring up,
Yeah.
we should probably do a part 2.
I think we were just
dig
getting warmed
into it.
up, but
It'd
we're
be fun
coming
to
up
talk
on an
about.
hour.
Are we coming up on an hour?
Yeah. Believe it or not. It's,
Time went by.
Time flies when you're having fun.
yeah, that's right.
It does.
So we'll have to close it out here for sure. But I think we're going to have Tony back again.
Well, I know the guys that schedule the interviews,
I do too.
so we probably can get
Let's
them.
let's coordinate with
in.
each
Yeah,
of them.
We'll get them. We'll get them in.
And
I'll check my calendar.
yeah.
okay.
You tell us when we're good, and then we'll do it.
Yeah.
2025 sometime.
Okay. Well,
Yeah.
I don't think I can wait that long to get into conspiracies.
Oh no,
Maybe if you come back and tease us with some alien stuff
we could do that.
about
Yeah.
the time that you helped bury some aliens that crashed.
Where'd you bury them?
Roswell, of course.
I wanted to go there, and Laura won't let me. She said we're not going to a trip, so you can try to look at
Man,
alien
it's
stuff.
like a Hajj. You
Yeah,
gotta go to
well,
gotta
that's-
go to Roswell.
I've been by there.
We'll see.
I flew something by there.
I just gotta. What'd you see?
It was south of there, well south.
Oh,
The
okay.
Geiger counter really went off.
Yeah. Oh, I bet it did. All right. Well, that was fun.
So thanks everybody for tuning in. Hope you all enjoyed getting to know Tony Moffatt, good friend of mine and mentor of mine in many areas. Appreciate your friendship, Tony, and thanks for coming on.
Likewise. Thank you for having me.
And
Thank you, sir.
So Dusty,
We'll see you guys next time.
see you next week.